one of those type of people. The way my life, the way I turned out, the way I emerged, I actually emerged this way by failing. Now, when I didn't go to Covenant University, first of all, I had to fail in all those other schools for me to go to the school where I discovered myself. And in that federal school, I was very lazy till I went to secondary school. It's survival of the fittest, so I had to learn. And I feel like that's why I discovered myself. The school my siblings went to is a school where they'll tell you what to do, you do this. I didn't have that type of structure. Like, you had to survive, So that's what I feel like it made me discover myself. And I got there by failing, to get admission to all these other schools my parents would have wanted me to go to. Time for university, actually at the time I applied to Covenant University, I applied for mass comm, got admission, my parents had paid my school fees, went to Lagos, they were just like, let's wait, if your NECO comes out and you have part to resume. I waited. My NECO came out and it came out with C. My parents tried to talk to somebody in Covenant University, let her resume, she'll bring it later, it didn't work. I had to go back home and stay at home for 1 year. That 1 year was very depressing. I really wanted to finish school at 20. Anyway, the following year came, I wrote WAEC again. Best believe, I wrote, there's one WAEC you write in October, November. Yeah. I wrote that one and I had D7 in maths. I wrote the NECO of that one, I had D7 in maths. I wrote, at one point, somebody in my mom's office was like, put her in all these passing centers now. It puts me in passing center. I told my mom that I don't have the mind to cheat, so I'm actually not going to cheat. So I failed those two. The following year, I wrote WAEC and NECO again. Best believe I had D7 in maths. And I told my mom I didn't want to stay at home again. So one of my uncles told her about Babcock University. In fact, at the time, I think Babcock was doing supplementary admission screening because they were done. I'd written Covenant, but because I had D7, they already knew it wasn't going to work. I applied for, I think, still mass comm at Babcock. Because I had D7, I had to resume at Babcock. When I got to Babcock, they were like, you know what, for you to study mass comm, you actually need a C in maths. So you can decide to study international law and diplomacy, which you don't need maths for. Now, like I told you, for me, discovering my purpose I had to fail for me to discover my purpose. Studying international law and diplomacy at the time was the best thing to happen to me. That's the course God actually wanted for me. I studied international law and diplomacy. Through my 4 years in the university, I discovered international human rights law. I discovered that I was so passionate about fighting for other people, I would read different international human rights laws, do analysis of some infringement of some people's rights here in Nigeria, and tie it to those international laws. And I discovered that, like I said, I was passionate about fighting for people, and it took me studying this course. First of all, it took me failing to get admission to Covenant University. It took me studying this course to discover that this is what I was meant to do. After that, NYC, I really wanted to serve in Lagos. I had gotten used to Lagos lifestyle. Somehow I landed in Abuja. In Abuja, I really wanted to serve in PwC, and my only reason, you remember I told you at the time, is good to always ask your why. Like, why do I want this? The reason I wanted to serve with PwC is because I heard they pay. Please, I'm under pressure. Nambi, please come and give me a pass to finish my story. I know that you're pressed for time, but if I don't finish this story, I don't know how I'm going to pass my message across. So please, when I see all of you standing like this, I'm putting you under pressure. So I wanted to serve with PwC, and the only reason I wanted, it had nothing to do with the course I studied. The only reason I wanted to serve with PwC is because at the time I heard they used to pay 120,000 to covers per month. So my why at the time was the money. What did that have to do with being passionate about international human rights law or even fighting for people's rights? Nothing. So you know what? I now said I would volunteer to teach children government in the government school opposite the house where I stayed in Wuse. But somehow my My dad spoke to someone and I ended up serving in CBN. Now when I got to CBN, before I went there, I mean, it was nice to be able to walk into that building, but guess what? I heard that when coppers, like in government institutions, they use coppers to buy roasted corn. And I knew for a fact, another thing about me is through my 4 years in university, I worked my summer holiday was 4 months. So for every summer holiday, I volunteered. So I used to volunteer with a non-profit, and it developed my skills in project management. So now I was used to this type of experience for my 4 years, even when I was young. And now I finished university and I'm going to serve in a place where I'll most likely be sent to buy roasted corn. I didn't want to do that. Anyway, I ended up in CBN. And because they saw that I studied international law and diplomacy, they deployed me to corporate secretariat. That's the office of secretary to the board. You need law to work there. So because they saw international law in my as my degree, they sent me there. So you see, like I said, for me, I discovered my purpose through redirection. I'll say failure and redirection. I wanted PwC because of the money. Now let me even bust your head. CBN does not pay up to half of what PwC pays to coppers. So it's not like there was even motivation if it's money I was looking for, which at the time, that's what I was looking for. So I sat in the office of the secretary to the board. Now, because I didn't want to buy roasted corn, I saw a video of some internally displaced children in Guaripa. And then I thought of how I wanted to go to the orphanage every weekend to teach them. Somehow, now the NGO I used to work with through my 4 years, the reason I keep going back, I'm sorry, I hope you understand my story and if not, I've not lost you. Yes. All the dots connect eventually when it comes to your purpose. Now the NGO I used to work with through my summer holidays, they used to organize this summer camp called Digitest. It was an ICT summer camp where they teach children. You pay, you register, and whatever state is being hosted in, you go there and they teach you how to design websites, develop mobile apps, and all of that. So from that, working with that organization for 4 years, I had an idea of how I could mobilize volunteers to work with. So when I saw a video of those children, I reached out to a person that posted it and I'm like, let's teach the children math and English every weekend. I left, after having a meeting with him, I left. When I went back home, I was like, why don't you turn this to a summer school? So I called him and said, I think we should turn this to a summer school. Let it be a 4-week summer school event. Let's recruit volunteers online. We designed a flyer, we put it out. So he called me and he's like, let's give this summer school a name. If we keep calling them summer school for internally displaced children, the stigma might be there, so let's give it a name. I kept thinking, these children are internally displaced children, they're victims of violence, they've seen guns, for some of them they've been recruited as child soldiers. So I was like, you know what, let's call it Arm the Child Project, ARM, A-R-M. So ARM for arms, like arms, weapons. And then this tagline came. No, I scribbled something on a paper, I have that paper till today, and it says, if you give children money, they will spend it without knowing how to make it. If you give children opportunities, they may not know what to make of it. But if you give them education, you give them a weapon with which they'll fight every hurdle life confronts them with. And then I came up with the tagline, education is a weapon, arm the child. So we had our first summer school. Now, at the time, I was also very responsible. After the summer school, these children, one man used to call me my NGO lady. I said, I don't want to have an NGO. Sometimes I'm scared when the thing looks like a big structure. The reason I'm telling you all these stories is because I want it to be as relatable as possible. I did not have this big vision. I didn't sleep one day and God appeared to me, far from it. I was redirected. I had to fail in certain aspects. I had to have those encounters, some encounters like visiting the orphanage and encountering children who couldn't speak English. I had to open Instagram and see a video of those internally displaced children. Now after the summer school, they kept calling me, Auntie, I want to go to school. So for me, through the summer school, people donated money to my personal account for that project. I didn't want that because it doesn't show, like, transparency won't be there. So I went to a bank, I was like, you know what, I want to open an account for a project. They were like, oh, you have to register with CAC. So it's not like I even set out to have an NGO. I went to open an account. They say you need to register with CAC and call somebody. What does it take to? They told me, and that's how this NGO was birthed. Now my NGO is going to be 8 years in December. You would think that through these 8 years it's been rosy, and that's why I told you that when it comes to the soil, you're going to experience it at through different phases of your life. There are days where, in fact, right now, when she said, this season hasn't been, one of the best for her, in my mind I could relate, because this is summer school season. I'm actually supposed to even be at a training for our volunteers. The struggles we're experiencing this season makes me want to give up. Now, I also want you to to find out something. They spoke about resigning. In December last year, I had the opportunity to leave my office, leave my job, and go and pay attention to the NGO. But guess what it is for me? I've discovered that teaching is my purpose, but I'm not meant to be paid to teach. I didn't discover it through a revelation. I know that I'm willing to take out of my salary to enroll children in school, but I have my career aspirations. Remember I told you that Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala is actually the person I look up to. I'll soon leave. So, yeah, that's how the NGO was birthed. Through this period, we've been able to provide access to, when it was time to register with CAC, I had to do mission, vision, objectives. I came up with all of that, and that's how we turned to a non-profit. That is my purpose. I'll tell you why I know it's my purpose. There are days where I wake up and I want to give up, but when I see pictures of these children, when I receive their call, I know for a fact that if I stop, it means that the lives of these children that depend on me doing what I've been called to do would be cut short, because the opportunity for them to be enrolled in school would have been taken away from them. Now in CBN, I used to be in corporate governance, but if you remember, I introduced myself as an economist earlier on. Randomly, like I told you, I like going to school. 4 years ago, I was like, you know what, I want to study economics, it's interesting, I want to understand how money works. Remember, I'm somebody that used to fail before. How do I want to study economics when I had D7 in maths? Let's believe I went back to university, I studied economics at undergrad level, and I've even moved to practicing economic policy now. The whole idea of this, I've taken too long, I'm sorry, I'm going to leave now. The whole idea of telling you this story of failure is because, like I said, there's the soil season where you need to get your hands dirty, where you don't understand how things are going. But guess what you need to do through that season? You need to plant your seed. And what's the seed? Discovering what works for you. Discovering what works for you is different from discovering your purpose. Like me in secondary school, I discovered that reading through the night works for me. So I discovered what works for me. When you discover what works for you and you put it into bringing out the best in yourself, you're planting a seed. Okay, I'm leaving now. You're planting a seed. As you plant a seed, you need to water it. What do you need to do how do you water it? I kept hearing them talking to you about your mindset. In difficult seasons, I like what she said, it's not the easiest season for her through this period, but she's constantly self-motivating. You need it. Like you said, mentorship is very important. Surrounding yourself with people. There are many communities in Nigeria, many communities that exist on the internet, outside of the internet. Become a volunteer somewhere. Yearly, they still have the volunteers network. Sign up to be a volunteer. Develop yourself. It's not everything you're going to get paid for. My 4 years working in university, I never got paid. My parents used to pay my transport money to the office and back and give me money for lunch. Sometimes it may not even be convenient for you, but find what works for you within your means. I don't have any motivational quotes to round this all up with. But the reason I told you my story is because I feel like it to be so relatable. Failing is one thing that is very relatable. And when I come here and tell you I'm an economist, I'm this and I'm that, you think of me as this big person, but this is how I started. I started failing. And transitioning to economic policy, best believe I struggled. In my former department, I was sort of a star. I'll write speeches and I'll give the governor to present it somewhere. And here I am, trying to work, and I'm struggling. Like, I'm the midst of many smart people that have been doing this for years. But what does that tell you? It's time for me to go back to my soil season. It's time for me to prepare the land for it to be, for some plantation to happen, and through the planting, learning from the people around me, humbling myself to know that it's time for me to start as a child again through this new career path. I have to water it by humbling myself to learn from them. So, guys, I'm done telling you my story. Thank you.